Imperial Agents, but they're cyborgs. That'll do for now. Let's kick things off by chopping up a Warhammer quest model, Inara Scion, apparently. I only really wanted the torso for this build, so the arm and head were gently encouraged into the bits box. The dress was a little bit red and fair for my new robot army, so I carved away the frilly details on the chest with a scalpel before cleaning up the resulting mess with a fiberglass brush. He got in early this week. The back half of the torso needed the old reverse Chewbacca, which was accomplished with a razor saw and a positive attitude, which I carried into the whole gluing bits together stage. The defolliculation, which I think we can all agree is a perfectly reasonable word, did leave the model a little bit challenged in the spine department. And with courage still on back order, I opted to fill the void with green stuff. Onto the head, and I chose to use the face from the Kilteen Sanctifier Miraculist as a kind of shrieking mask. This was to be grafted onto the front of the suitably robotic-looking head, in this case from the Inquisitor Ostromandius set. Much like a geography teacher, I wanted the face to be suspended from wires, so I got some wires, copper ones, and twisted them together to form some sort of abominable loom. The head and face needed holes to accept the cabling, so these were dug using the sort of tools that you might expect, and once I'd arrived at the desired girth, the cabling was glued in place. After a bit of the old snip snip, the process was repeated on the other end, and I had myself a funny looking head. Speaking of which, I'm Chris, this is Offbeat Builds, and today we're doing another Grim Team. And that means this model needs a base, a sentence that's nearly as pointless as it is boring. Less boring, but only just, is the unification of the head and the body, the completion of which heralded the coming of the limbs. In the right corner we have the almost predictable Escher Ganger arm, while on the left an Arcoflagellant provided this delightful electro-whip thing. And with a bit of filling from our old friend Sprugu, things were looking pretty much complete for the first member of my incongruation conclave. What's an incongruation conclave, I hear you ask? Well, I'm going to get to that in a little bit, along with the whole Grim Team business. But first, I need to find use for a Space Marine Centurion. You know how everyone loves this? I figured, let's make a small one. While the Centurion model may have its flaws, the servo legs that sit underneath the armour are pretty rad. For the top half of the servitor, I went straight to the left field and selected a servitor, though this poor chap did have to lose his legs, and all of the details on his torso. But that's no bother, as his body is merely the cybernetic host for the Miraculous that I decapitated in the first build. As with all good parasites, they were simply glued onto the front. We'll worry about the whole how does it all work piffle later. Did I really just say piffle? Anyway, the head came from the Frostgrave Wizards 2 set, and the bun was surgically removed in order to make space for some head cables. This conclave sure does love some head cables. As you would expect, said cables connect the parasite to the host, and as is the case with most relationships of this kind found in the natural world, this was accomplished using only the finest bits of bent wire. Fans of the segue will be appalled by my abrupt change to arm business with no further explanation. I will, however, explain that I don't like that whole gun jammed into the shoulder thing that the servitor model has going for it. So I gave my robotically enhanced pal a classy ball and shoulder joint for their multi-melter. This enabled the use of the rarely modelled "I'm too zen to keep my gun pointed forward" pose. What? Did you read all of that? No, I wouldn't have bothered either. Anyway, my interrogator is half Skitari, half Repentia, the latter of which needed separating from the tyranny of legs using a razor saw. To make it all make sense, sort of, a small wedge of styrene was positioned at the waist and trimmed to shape before the torso was affixed in place using, your friend of mine, glue. I've been waiting for an excuse to use this Escher Death Maiden's head for a while, which is all well and good, but I'd like to show you some arms. Now, it's tough to see through that veil, so my interrogator makes up for that unscalable mountain with limbs, lots of them, holding eyes, obviously. I imagine most of their interrogation is accomplished using the time-honoured method of having a good old look. The limb bouquets needed a bit of a styrene spacer to move them away from the torso for reasons that will likely make sense later down the road. And with 6 arms in place, things were looking pretty rubbish, so I figured, why not add more? Then, of course, it was time to address the spherical situation, or giving my robot pal ball-bearing eyes. At this point in a build like this, you have to choose how to hide all the mess. In lieu of real skills like sculpting, I chose to strive towards enrobement. The cloak and dagger work here relies heavily on coffee filter paper, which has a nice fibrous texture and can be set using all manner of adhesives. I like to use thin cyanoacrylate glue to tack it in place, and, friend of the channel, Matt Mod Podge as a setting agent. Once it's nice and damp, you can tease it apart and make a right old mess. I just want you to know that I've resisted the temptation to remark on the model being unarmed, because I'd like to think that I'm above that sort of thing. I am, however, not above gluing a bunch of skull candles on top of the Skitarii backpack, and let's be honest with ourselves, neither are you. Not to pat myself on the back too hard, but I really like this one. Now, what was that about Grim Team? In 10 seconds or less, Grim Team is a collaborative project we're running over on the Discord to bring a bit of creativity and freedom to the 40k skirmish setting. If that sounds like a bit of you, then links are where you'd expect them to be. Time for something straightforward. My Mystic started life as the Salvationist model from the Sanctifier's Kilting box, since I'm going for the whole masks thing. To sell the cyborg bit, I opted to make a nice hose arm using my normal method of wrapping some 0.4mm copper wire around another piece of the same wire using the unfathomable majesty of rotation. This wonderfully flexible shrine to the power of the helix was then glued into the arm socket and gently bent into shape to form a nice flowing curve. For the rear of the model, a backpack from a Kriegsman was impaled in a moment that some are calling Clippy's last stand, to which a jewellery charm was affixed to provide the Mystic with something that looked somewhat mystical. Now, that does have some otherworld charm to it, but the kill team is a bit lacking in the firepower department. I chose another Repentia body for the nice dynamic pose. It also helped the sprue was within arm's reach. Undeterred by the jaunty angle, the body found a base, and a neat little auto-pistol wielding arm from the Imperial Agents box. To give a bit of cyborg cred, the other arm came from an arco-flagellant, which provided a fun flowing pose and some nice visual balance, though it did need a bit of remedial work with some plastic putty. If in doubt, plunder a Sigmar model. That was very much the mantra I employed when selecting this Daughters of Cainhead in order to maintain the masked theme. For the second pistol, I wanted a robotic arm because more limbs can only be a positive. The Skitarii backpack was secured directly to the model, and a Cataphron Destroyer robotic arm glued in situ where one of the weird little side gubbins once existed. Then it was simply a case of jamming on a plasma pistol and calling it complete. This model reminds me of something that I can't quite place. Help me out, chat. At this point, I thought I was finished, but it turns out counting past 5 is a bit tricky. The last build is actually pretty unremarkable, so if Editing Chris has got this right, we're just speeding through the steps right now and there'll be a fancy graphic showing all the parts right about now. So that's Grim Team number 2 done and dusted. I had to rush the paint job on these to get them completed before the half-term break and the inevitable parenting that entails.
Daddy, pay attention to me!
So I do need to go back and give them a bit more love with the old fine detail broom. Anyway, next time out I'm building something big and stupid, which for some reason comes quite naturally.